Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hypersonic55, and today I'm going to give you a video film related again. This is going to be my top 10 films of 2011. Now, I know 2011 is basically long gone. We're already 2 days into 2012, and I should have got this video out long before, December 30th, but I just put it off for so long. So, I just had to get this video out. I just had to do it. So, yeah. These films that I'm going to put into my top 10, which I'm going to relate to you now, is a mixture of my favourite films of 2011 and films that I feel in my mind that everybody else should have watched in the year as well. So, let's start. So starting in reverse order, at number 10 we happen to have Fast 5, which happens to be the best in the series, to be honest. It is the fifth installment in the series and happens to feature Vin Diesel, Paul Walker and several of the other members over the course of the last 4 movies, all joining together to go about and do a sort of bank heist sort of film this time round. Sure, there's still cars involved, there's still girls involved, and a lot of crazy action going on, but this one happens to feature a lot more on a much bigger scale. But overall, it is all about the action that goes down in this film, and it was just a whole lot of fun to go about and see not only Vin Diesel back in the films again with the rest of his crew packing the heat and all that sort of stuff, but it was also great to see Vin Diesel and The Rock go head to head and just beat the crap out of each other. It was wonderful. It was just fun, and it was just one of the fun movies I actually happened to enjoy this year. It was some good stuff. In Boots. Now, this film, before it happened to show up, I didn't think was actually going to work at all. Most spin-offs of most main film series are normally crap anyway, but this one happened to be really surprising. It was a very entertaining movie which happened to have its own style, its own flair, and visually, as usual, DreamWorks happened to be packing the heat, and Puss as a main character on his own, without the addition of Shrek and Donkey and all the other characters from the Shrek films, happens to hold out well. He happens to be a very entertaining character with an interesting past setting that this film presents. Puss in Boots was a great movie. I liked it a lot. It was very lovely and a lot better than the last 2 Shrek movies. Okay, so now at number 8 we happen to have Kung Fu Panda number 2. Now this is also another film from DreamWorks which I really didn't think was going to work, purely because I'm one of those sort of people that really don't like sequels to films that really don't need them. Kung Fu Panda, for me, in a lot of ways didn't really need a sequel because it was a film that should have stood on its own and it didn't need a continuation in my opinion. But Kung Fu Panda 2 was that continuation that actually worked. It was a solid sequel with a much more interesting plot, a deeper storyline, and a much more interesting villain. And Jack Black as our main character Po was just lovely as always. Kung Fu Panda number 2 was definitely a great sequel, and yeah, just good stuff. Okay, so at number 7 we happen to have Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. Now this film I had been waiting for so long, and luckily the wait was worth the time. It was such a wonderful movie. Robert Downey Jr. is still as incredible as he always is in any film that he happens to jump into. Props need to be given to Jude Law as well as Watson, and there was so much more action in this film. The film was deeper, darker, and much better than the original in a lot of ways. The music by Hans Zimmer was fantastic, and Jared Harris as Professor Moriarty was just fantastic. Lovely stuff. Okay, so now we happen to have film number 6 in our list, and this happens to be Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Now this is the 4th in the Mission Impossible series, and like many other people, I didn't believe that Mission Impossible needed a 4th film. It could have just stayed at number 3 and we could have just washed our hands with it. But luckily Mission Impossible 4 was wonderful. Ghost Protocol was one of the best films I saw in the whole of 2011. Tom Cruise can still do the action stuff in such a fantastic way, and action packed to the most ridiculous level, and Brad Bird just needs to be directing more movies. He's just invincible. Love him. Okay, so at number 5 we happen to have Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Now this was the second half of the 7th movie and it was a pretty satisfying ending, to be honest. It was fairly dramatic, really interesting, and the special effects in the film were just ridiculously awesome. And yeah, I watched the film 3 times because, to be honest, I really couldn't let go of the Harry Potter film series because it had grown so attached to me. But it was a satisfying ending. Okay, so at number 3 we happen to have Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now this was another film that I was wary of from before it actually was released, purely because the Planet of the Apes series is a very beloved series by a lot of the people that watched it at the time. So I was thinking, you know what, a reboot or a prequel to the series? Is that really necessary? But once the trailer started showing up and I found out who was involved, I decided, you know what, let's give this film a chance, and I'm so glad that I did. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was one of the best films I saw all summer. Andy Serkis is one of the most amazing guys in the history of life, and what he did with the motion capture and all the stuff that Weta Digital did with the CGI in the film was nothing short of amazing. James Franco was great in the film, so was the rest of the cast. There was a really interesting narrative to the film, and it was very character driven. Caesar's story is so emotional and lovely, and my goodness, it was great. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, yeah, thumbs up, man, thumbs up. Okay, so now moving on to my third favourite film of the year. At number 3, we happen to have Thor. Now, to be honest, in a lot of ways, this was my favourite film of like the whole of 2011. It just had everything I'd ever wanted. I'm a massive comic book fan, and Thor was just unexpectedly awesome. Wow, I just love it so much. Thor is just one of the most coolest Marvel characters in the history of anything, and like, you know, this film was like wonderfully directed by Kenneth Branagh. He brought the character to life, and Chris Hemsworth as the lead character was wonderful. Tom Hiddleston was actually just wonderful as Loki. He was just like, yeah, totally sweet. And it was another great film leading up to the Avengers film that's going to be showing up in the May point of 2012. Thor was great. I watched it 5 times in the cinema. Yes, 5 times, because it was that awesome. And yeah, I loved it. Pure and simple. Okay, so at number 2, we happen to have X-Men First Class. Now, out of the 3 Marvel films that showed up in 2011, this was probably the most strongest one. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender were just wonderful as Charles and Eric, showing their previous lives prior to the original X-Men trilogy. They were wonderful. They gave us an interesting story filled with a wonderful cast of people that were just magical. It was just a great summer movie. It was well handled, brilliantly timed, and yeah, I liked the film a lot. It was one of the better films I saw in the summer. So at number 1, we happen to have one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in the history of life, Senna. Now, this film happens to document the life of Ayrton Senna, who happened to be the Brazilian motor racing champion. I knew next to nothing about this film before I happened to see a trailer for it at the MCM London Expo, and it just happened to look really interesting, really incredible, and I just wanted to watch it. Now, this documentary film was incredible in grabbing your attention, informing you about, like, you know, this whole world of F1 that you may know next to nothing about. And it had such a great use of archive footage and music and all that sort of stuff that captured all the raw emotions that most documentary films are meant to go about and do. And it was just wonderful. It moved me to tears in so many ways, and it was just like, wow, this was one of the best things I'd ever saw in the whole of 2011. So yeah, Senna is just one of the best films ever. Go watch it when you have the time. So yeah, that's been my top 10 of 2011, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously it's 2012 and it is a bit late, but you know, I just had to get it out there. So hopefully you've enjoyed the list that I've given you today. Obviously there's a good number of films I happen to miss between September and December of 2011, but like, you know, these are my picks. Okay, so until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Hypersonic 55, signing out.